Hey physics friends, Mr. Collier here. I want to give you some tips today for working in spreadsheets. So here I have a spreadsheet already ready, and I want to just show some ways to manipulate some data. So say we had a couple data points that were following a pattern of going up by 10 every time, so 5, 15, our next one's going to be 25. Rather than type this out, especially if I have a lot of data to do, I can just highlight the data that follows this pattern, click on the bottom right hand corner, and drag that down, and it's going to automatically populate with that data and that pattern. Another useful tip is using equations. So like over here I have this column called velocity. Velocity is distance divided by time, and so I can make an equation and have it do all these calculations for me pretty conveniently. I'm just going to click on the square where I want the equation to go, and instead of typing in a number, I'm going to type in equals, and then I can do an equation. So in this case I'm going to do a distance, and let's say the distance is like 1.9 centimeters, and I'm going to hit divided by a little backslash, and then I want to divide it by a time. So say this is the time I want to divide it by, right? So I'm going to click on that square, and it tells me which cell that is. This one is cell C2. And if I hit enter, it's going to do that calculation for me. And then the convenient thing is if I click on that square, and again click on the bottom right hand corner and drag it down, it's going to do that same calculation with all of the times from the relative square rather than that exact same square. So like if I click on the second one, it's going to say C3, right? And that's a nice and convenient way to get it to do a bunch of math for me. Another thing I can do is then truncate this data. So all of these data go out to a whole bunch of decimal points. I can click on the top of the column, and then up in this little bar there's usually something that says move your decimal place. So you can increase or decrease. I'm going to decrease these decimals to get them to a more reasonable number of significant digits. Now it doesn't actually do significant digits, it just does decimal places, but you can get it pretty good that way to have your data a lot more manageable. And you can do this in a variety of different ways. So I can enter formulas like kinetic energy has a squared sign in it. So this is going to be 1/2 times the mass, and say that's 0.02626 grams. And I'm going to times that by the velocity squared, right? So that's how kinetic energy works. So I'm going to click on the cell that I want, and then I'm going to do the little caret and a 2. So that'll be raised to the second, and that'll be squaring it. And again, I can take that and drag it down, click on the bottom right hand corner and drag it down and get all that nice data filled out. I can do the same thing. I can do MGH. Gravity is 9.8, and I can multiply it by the height, which is whatever's over in this column over here, my height column, and enter that down. I can also take those two columns and decrease the decimals if I want. And then one last thing I want to show you is you can also add things together. So I can hit equals, and I can click the cells and hit a plus in between them, or another thing I can do is I can type sum and then parentheses and just kind of drag across the cells I want to add. So in this case I'm going to add kinetic and potential, so I drag horizontally and hit enter, and it's going to add those two cells. But you might find yourself in a situation where you want to add something vertically. So I could hit equals, sum, and then drag vertically down a column, and it can add things up there. So obviously I'm using this for some physics data, but you could use this for data entry to keep track of almost anything, your money, right, etc. So hope you found that helpful. Good luck.